A fascinating week in store for the cable pair. So many issues unresolved, many, if not all of which, could be wrapped up by the end of this week, which could be really interesting as far as the pound dollar pair is concerned. The obvious one of these here in the UK, of course, is the Brexit talks. But also over in the US, we have fiscal stimulus talks, attempts to avoid a government shutdown with a spending bill. And even this evening, the Federal Reserve could be increasing its bond buying program. So you can imagine just how much this could potentially impact the pound dollar pair if all of these are wrapped up by the end of the week. Now, that may seem optimistic. We've been waiting for 4 or 5 months for Congress to come to an agreement on a stimulus bill, COVID relief bill, and we've also been waiting 4.5 years for the UK and the EU to wrap up terms on the exit and new trading agreement. But it does feel like we are now hitting the ultimate deadline. In terms of both of these, the deadline really is the end of this year. As far as the spending bill is concerned to avert a government shutdown in the US, it's the end of this week, although 1 week temporary bills could be passed, as we saw last week. But I do really think that it is going to come to a head potentially on all of these by the end of this week. We seem to be making inroads on these Brexit talks. The terms that we're hearing now from Brussels is that we can see a narrow path to a deal. That is promising. Of course, the UK is still playing this down, still saying that there's large voids that need to be overcome towards a deal. But I do think this is continuing to just be a negotiating ploy, even on both sides, not just the one. I do think we are close to a deal. Now, there's just simply no time now left to continue on this path. That, don't get me wrong, if this goes into the weekend, even early next week, I don't think anyone would be surprised. But we are now only days away, it seems, from a deal. And I am still extremely optimistic that a deal is going to be struck, given the issues that are remaining and given the progress that's been made, for example, on level playing field over the course of the last week. In terms of the US, it seems that we are getting ever closer now to a stimulus bill as well, which will be attached to the spending bill to avert a government shutdown, but also economic hardship from various support packages expiring at the end of this year. The package could be around $700 billion, but it's still tough to say at this point. We did see a meeting yesterday evening of the leaders of the House, the Senate, and the deputy leaders as well, and all seem to come out of this feeling quite optimistic. It is going to be a slimmed down deal. There is going to be need for more negotiations early next year. But I think the important thing right now is to avoid that cliff edge at the end of December. The other thing, obviously, is this evening's Fed decision. Now, by the time you've watched this, you may have already seen the outcome of this. It's an interesting one because the Fed has suggested previously that more bond buying could be on the cards, that more stimulus is going to be necessary, pushing for Congress to pass its own stimulus bill, potentially even waiting for it to do so. But today does mark the perfect opportunity to do so. We're seeing record COVID cases in the US. Unfortunately, we're also seeing record fatalities as well, passing 3,000 on a daily basis, and the economy is going to suffer. We're seeing more restrictions being imposed, as we're seeing elsewhere around the world, particularly across Europe. So more stimulus is going to be necessary, and the fact that they're going to be armed with new economic projections today does mean that this is the perfect opportunity to do just that. Whether that's going to be bond buying or something more significant, we'll have to wait and see. There's been a lot of talk about yield curve control over recent months, but I'm not sure this is something that the Fed is quite ready to unleash just yet. Well, what does this all mean for the charts? We look at the pound dollar pair and we are trading around 135. This is a more than almost 2.5 year high. We've traded around these levels before, but we've never really managed to break and hold above them. And it does seem there is a lot of optimism in these markets around the potential for a Brexit deal, but an actual deal being wrapped up, or Fed providing additional stimulus more than the market is expecting, or even potentially maybe a failure of these US stimulus talks. A number of things could be the catalyst for a break above 135. A break above 135 could see it gain significant momentum in the initial stages, especially if it's triggered by a Brexit deal. And then it becomes a case of just how far this can go. Could it potentially push 140 in the event of a Brexit deal? And how long will it last, given just how much this is priced in? It's going to be a fascinating thing to see over the next few days.